Just a note before we start. Our show talks about touchy subjects that may be difficult for some of our listeners. Take care of yourself. If you feel you need to seek help, see the links at the end of our show notes for resources.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Touchy Subjects Podcast, the podcast that aims to break the silence that tends to come with conversations around domestic and sexual violence. I'm Sean.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we're going to be discussing rebranding human touch with our special guest, Epiphany Jordan. So thank you for joining us today, Epiphany.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited about our conversation. After we talked the other day, I was like, oh God, this is going to be an awesome podcast. So let's get to it.
Awesome. Yes, and we are very excited to have you, especially because when we talked to all of our guests prior to recordings, we had a blast with you, so this will be fun. But before we jump in, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Epiphany Jordan, and as Sean mentioned, I am on a mission to rebrand human touch. I feel that the way that we think about it doesn't work for many of us. And so I've been doing research on this. I kind of started off down this path about, I guess it was 11 years ago when I lived in Austin, Texas. I had a hands-on touch business called Karuna Sessions, which was a ritualized experience of human connection. And then I published a book called Somebody Hold Me, The Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch, because I knew that, again, that the way we think about touch doesn't work for us, and it's especially hard for single people. And then when the pandemic hit, we shuttered the business, and I ended up going back to school to get my master's in public health with the idea of bringing a public health perspective into this topic and wanting to create public health programs around wellness. And the MPH program I went to, we studied social marketing, which I think, Sean, you know a little bit about. It's kind of it's using commercial marketing techniques and applying them to public health. And so the program was kind of a hybrid of marketing and public health, and I was able to take a deep dive into this question of rebranding public health, and came up with some pretty interesting data after I did my research. So
yeah, it is interesting also just thinking about meshing public health and marketing too, knowing that all marketing is done specifically, like obviously to sell a product. So when you're trying to sell people on improving their health or improving the health of their communities, you're going to need to use the same tactics.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like something like cigarette smoking, I mean, those guys are spending billions and billions of dollars on marketing, and that's cigarettes is the competition of quitting smoking. So it's better to use the same tactics that they're using. I mean, some people who work in public health and social services find it very distasteful, but it's also based on deep qualitative research and finding out what people want, what their desires are, what their fears are, what their blockages are, what their barriers, and what are the benefits, what are the barriers, what are the costs. It's like then you can talk to them in the language that they want. And it's always really surprising because people, when you get down to like what your central message is, it's always different from what you think it might be going into. And but again, it's like if you ask people what they need, they'll tell you. It's just that we almost never ask them, even though they're populations that we often serve.
Yeah. So then looking at especially your field of research that you had done research for, what was it you found when you were working on trying to rebrand human touch?
Yeah, so in my statement of purpose for grad school, I said that human touch had a branding problem, and my faculty advisor came back to me and she's like, well, you say you want to rebrand human touch, figure out how to do that. And so I did this independent study project. The first thing I did was research different branding frameworks. I studied I settled on storytelling and brand archetypes because if you have a story that's told in a familiar way with familiar characters, it makes it easier for people to grasp new concepts. And the target audience that I used, the priority population that I did qualitative interviewing with, was single heterosexual women in their 50s who wanted to be in a romantic relationship. I mean, I knew from my own experiences of trying to date that, it's difficult. I mean, it's hard for people of all genders and ages, but
Mm-hmm.
I figured that this was a group that may have had kids before or something. So, and it definitely had relationships before, so that they might be uh, open to getting touch in different ways, and also that they knew the value of it. So the way that I did the research was I wrote 3 different stories about 3 different potential ways that they could get their touch needs met, and then ask them questions about it. And we also kind of did a deep dive into our cultural stories around touch, what they saw from their friends on social media, what they saw in ads and movies and books, all these places where you're being given these images and descriptions of touch, and what do you think of them? And from there, I was able to distill it down. After doing data analysis, I was able to distill it down into our 3 current brand archetypes, and then the 4 rebrand archetypes that might work better and make it more accessible and inclusive for more people.
So before we get into what those are, do you want to just share, like, in your experience, what you've learned? What are the benefits of human touch? Why do we need them so much?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really important because it's not something that we think about as an integral part of touch. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of human life, touch is super, super important for neurological development of infants after they're born. The touch you receive in the first 12 to 18 months of your life can set you up for the rest of your life in terms of emotional regulation and attachment style. I mean, it lasts long, long, long after. I always say if I were queen of the world, my first act would be to make it so that parents could stay home with their kids for the first year or 2 of their lives. I think it would make such a difference in our world. And so touch and the hormone that's associated with it, oxytocin, have so many health benefits. It reduces inflammation, it reduces blood pressure, it helps counteract the effects of cortisol in your heart, it boosts your immune system, it can reduce appetite, it helps with wound healing, it helps with pain relief. And then on top of that, it's human. Actually, it's not even just human, it's mammalian. I just had to, before we came on, I had to lock my cats up because I have a 17-year-old cat, and she just wants to be in my lap all the time, so it's something, it's something that goes across the spectrum of all mammals. It's like they seek out touch not just to care for their young, but also, for comfort and connection, and all these things that we don't really think about touch for.
And like, it almost feels like you get like addicted. Like if you have good touch happening in your life, like you crave it, you want it. Like even if it's not, if it's another person, if it's an animal, like my dog sleeps with me every night and she sleeps like curled up against me.
Yeah,
And if I go away for a weekend or something like that and I don't have her there, I'm like, it's not that I just miss her. It's like I'm missing something. Like it's
yeah.
crazy how much we, and I mean, yes, this happens with partners too, but my dog sleeps in between us, so whatever. Uh,
She knows where her place is.
but yeah, so it's just it's amazing where if you have that that healthy relationship with touch, with your partner, with your family, with your pets, with whatever, it can really make such a difference in your life.
It does. I mean, I talk to people all the time who talk about being touch starved, and they're paranoid and they're angry and they're depressed and they're anxious, and and a lot of them, oh, I don't need that, I don't need that. But a lot of people do also admit that they're touch starved. But I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense. Like with your dog, she started out her life in a litter of puppies. So not only was she snuggled up with her mom, but she had all of her brothers and sisters alongside of her putting pressure on it. And, again, that's I used to describe what we did at Karuna sessions as like we would always do it with two practitioners, and the session would culminate in the two practitioners holding the client in between them the way that uh, mimic the feeling of being held by your mother as an infant. And it's like your body knows that feeling. I mean, if you think about the start of the human species, we started out sleeping in big piles in caves for warmth and safety up until 100 years ago. I mean, like y'all are in Michigan, you would have been sleeping with your entire family in the same bed in the winter before the advent of electricity, for survival. It's like our survival as a species is so connected to this idea of having touch and having other humans close to us. And we've really lost it in the past 100 years. We've grown further and further physically apart. And I think it's biting us in the ass.
Well, and it's fun to think about too, like human touch, because obviously listeners hopefully get the understanding, like not just like in terms of like a sexual form of touch, right? Like a hug is a form of human touch. As a man, it's fun thinking about human touch in the fact that we get taught growing up to avoid having that form of affection with anyone except for a romantic partner. So it's really fun to kind of just like piece that together, like, oh yeah, but when my friends and I get drunk, like it's a lot easier for us to like hug each other, have our arms around each other and everything while we're talking, just like shoulder to shoulder, sit next to each other when we're out, like doing stuff. And we've talked about it a few times on the on the podcast too, but where it's like where men use alcohol or other forms of substances to allow for us to do things that are deemed quote unquote socially unacceptable.
Yeah.
Because it's things that we as humans still crave. Like we still crave that connection. We crave that touch with people that we care about.
Yeah.
But it's just not socially acceptable as much.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's changed in the past 100 years. I mean, if you look online, there are beautiful, beautiful pictures of men being affectionate with their friends, holding hands or sitting on each other's laps. And again, I mean, to think about like, if you were a soldier, and you were out fighting a war in the middle of winter, sleeping in a tent, you'd definitely be cuddled up with your buddies, or, like men traveling on the road and staying in an inn for a night, you'd be sharing beds. And, again, it was something that we just kind of took for granted and had to do because of survival. We didn't think about the implications of it. And I feel so sad for men that they have lost that. I mean, that's, I did my research specifically with women, but this is a topic that I think about for men a lot. So
yeah. So you had mentioned the old archetype, or the archetypes that you had found or were looking at when you were doing your research. Some of those, because we had spoken before, these old archetypes are going to be ones that people are probably the most familiar with. So did you want to explain those a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were three main archetypes that people talked about that they saw a lot when they were thinking about images of touch. The first one is going to be a really obvious one that we've talked about a little bit already, which is touch as lover. It's by far the most popular one. It's aspirational. Oh, actually, hang on a second. Let me jump back just a sec because branding is kind of a nebulous concept. A brand is defined in business terms of how a product delineates itself from another product of the same category in the marketplace. If you think about like cars, it's like a Subaru is a car and a Volkswagen is a car, but they have very different images, and they're, who they try to sell to, and who they appeal to and stuff. But a brand is also how consumers view something. So when we're talking about Touch's current brand, this is how the public, the things that are in the public's mind when you say Touch. So Touch's Lover is obviously the most popular one. It's the most aspirational one. I mean, think about dating websites, romance novels, porn. It's like people spend, billions and billions of dollars every year trying to, satisfy that need or fantasizing about having that need met. Unfortunately, it's not quite working out that way so much anymore. About 40% of Americans are single. We're getting married a lot later than we are. There's more divorces. Actually, I think the divorce rate's gone a little bit down. And, there's a lot of dissatisfied people. And this idea that touch equals sex, that you're only sharing touch with people that you have sex with, that spills over into people who are in romantic relationships. There are a lot of people who don't get any touch from their romantic partners because if they're in a situation where they're not getting along, or one partner wants more sex than the other, and they go in to give the other partner a hug, they're like, get away from me. You're hugging me because you want to have sex. So this is a problem that affects both single and partnered people, this idea of Touch's Lover. So that's the first one. The second one is Touch's Caregiver. A lot of the people I interviewed talked about, seeing these images on social media of happy families that it kind of felt performative to them. Oh, look at how happy we are. We're all like standing on the beach hugging and that kind of thing. And again, as the world's changed, people are having fewer children than they used to. A lot of people are choosing not to have children at all. And then this idea of Touch as caregiver, the brand archetype of caregiver is associated with this very selfless giving. I don't know, do either of y'all have kids?
I will in about a month and a half.
Oh, I'm
People,
so excited for you. That's amazing. Congratulations.
when people are listening to this episode, there's very good odds that my son will be born.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so excited for you. You're gonna make a fantastic father.
Hopefully.
So one of the issues with Touch as caregiver as a brand, in terms of the people who are doing it, is they get really burnt out and touched out. I mean, in our culture, we don't value caregiving. It's something that we assume that people are going to do and give of themselves selflessly. So like you hear mothers talk a lot about being touched out because, it's like you have these kids who are like, gimme, 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 and it's like the touch is intended to take as opposed to giving. And, when you think as well about professions like preschool teachers or CNA or something, these low paid professions where there's a lot of touch involved, this is something that isn't satisfying people's needs for touch. Sometimes it is. I mean, obviously, uh, parents bonding with their children is a very necessary and beautiful thing, but sometimes it's just like So, and again, it's like people that I interviewed were saying, hey, these happy families that we're seeing don't bear a lot of resemblance to my own experience of childhood, which brings us to the third brand archetype. And it's actually like there's kind of this set of like 12 business brand archetypes, and the third one is not one of them, and that is Touch as a villain. And it's something that we don't necessarily talk about because we're so focused on these beautiful romance stories or, great sex or whatever. But, most of us have had that experiences with non-consensual touch. I mean, y'all deal with this on your show all the time, people being physically abused or, raped or whatever, by somebody that they know in their intimate partnerships or, on dates or what have you. Um, right as the pandemic was starting, the BBC did this big survey. It was called the Touch Project, and they had responses from 40,000 people in
Wow.
100 different countries. I think, don't quote me on that. I don't have the statistic in front of me, but 40% of people said that one of the reasons that there wasn't more touch in the world is because of non-consensual touch. So it's like, and with Me Too and making, people saying that it makes it harder for them to date, it's like we've kind of created this culture where now we're scared of all touch, and rightfully so, because there is still a lot of touch that people don't want, that's non-consensual, that is damaging. And we have to talk about it when we talk about touch. We don't want to throw all touch out because of that, but we want to minimize the appearance of touch as villain at the same time. So those are the three brand archetypes. And, there's a lot of people out there who will tell you that they're being left out of the equation by having those three being the main ways that you get your touch needs met.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of thinking about touch as villain too for a little bit, and obviously like a lot of our listeners probably have this one as something they might be familiar with, but the way that I'm thinking about it is, you mentioned your cat earlier, and this was what really made me think about it, is my friend has a cat who absolutely loves me, her owner, and then the other people who had lived in that house with them at various points in time. We have another friend, though, who absolutely loves this cat and wants to pet her and have her sit on her lap all the time. Tonks does not want to deal with it, and she will run from her, she will hide from her.
Oh.
But it's in part because Taylor actively will search Tonks out to try to like find her to like pet her and stuff, and Tonks is like, nope, I don't want this, and she'll run away. Tonks doesn't want the touch at that time, but meanwhile on the 4th of July, I can be over at the house, lay on the couch, and Tonks will jump up on my lap and sit on my chest.
Oh, yeah. So animals can be picky about it.
Yeah, so it's when you have that conversation around touch, it's okay for some people to have this touch with you, but not for others. And it's the same thing with everything. Like, I'm not going to hug some random person on the street because I don't know if they're going to want to hug. Now I can do the universal signal for hug and put my arms out, but if their arms don't go out, I'm not going to still hug them. So it's recognizing not only what touch you're okay with as well, but the other people that you are communicating with or interacting with, what touches they're okay with too.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I would say I think it's so funny because like so many people in this world will compare like a woman to a cat, right? Because I want to be touched when I want to be touched, and that's it. Like, I don't, and if I don't, then you better get back or the claws are going to come out, right? And I just like, cats have it down. They know. And if they are ready for it and there's someone they're comfortable with, they're in that lap. They're rubbing their head on you. And, I just think we could all learn something from them because they, in their own way, they have their way of showing those social cues. Like, I'm going to go hide in the bedroom because you're probably going to come try and touch me and I don't want you to. So that's like their safety net, right? So like, as humans, we don't get to just go hide under the bed. We have to figure out a different way to let people know that this isn't a touch that I want. This isn't, something that I'm craving right now at this time. But we also have like this need to be polite to people, right? So
Yeah.
Somebody who's wanting to try and come and give you a hug and you're like, okay, I don't really want it, but maybe they need it, or, this is just how they are. Like my, I have family who's like, they're huge into like giving hugs and kisses. Like like you just, when you get to a family gathering, like someone's coming and giving you a hug and kissing you on the cheek, like immediately. And I'm just like, no, like I just got here. Give me a minute. Like let me, and also I don't know your people all that well. Um,
Yeah.
but still like you still feel like you have to accommodate that other person. So I think we could
Yeah.
really like learn from just trying to figure out how we can give our own social cues that are just like, okay, yeah, like maybe now's not the best time to try and kiss someone you barely know. I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, there's not a lot of social scripts, and one of the things when I talk about this topic on podcasts that I think is a really great takeaway for people is that everybody has a different comfort level with touch, and
Mm.
it might be, and because boundaries are fluid, it could be not that thing, not right now, not with you, but maybe when you see them another time, you're like super open to getting a hug, so it's kind of just a matter of stopping and checking in with the other person. A phrase that I found really helpful that a friend of mine came up with is that a boundary is for me and not against you. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people out there, especially women have been taught to be people pleasers for forever. And so there's, this idea of like, oh, if I don't hug this person, I'm going to hurt their feelings, or I'm going to feel bad if I say no to them. And, that's a matter of cultural change as well. I mean, and then too, when you throw on it, parents like will, kind of shame their people. I mean, like I had an experience when I moved back home to my hometown about 3 years ago, and my niece was 9 or 10 at the time, and she would not hug me, and I was just crushed because I love her.
Mm.
And it turned out that like a lot of times I would come over and like my deodorant wasn't working really well, and I switched deodorants, and now she'll hug me again, or actually now she won't because she's a tween, so she just kind of side eyes me and says hi as she walks by. So
Yeah.
sometimes I get a hug from her and sometimes I don't, but it's like a lot of people just don't have that understanding, of bodily autonomy, and it's both an individual and personal thing, and it's also collective and widespread in our culture, and different cultures too, and there's so many different factors that go into whether people are comfortable with touch or not. It has to do with your family upbringing. It has to do with your ethnic background, or your where your people are from. There's different cultures where that are a lot more touchy feely than others. It could be religious, it could be your job. I had a friend who was a CEO of a company, and he was a really affectionate guy, and he had to learn like I can't hug my employees because it means like a really different thing to them. So there's those power differentials. It could be neurodivergence. There's so many different things that go into making up our own kind of personal recipe around what we do and don't like as far as touch goes. So, and it's just a matter of kind of stopping and asking and navigating. But we all kind of depend on body language, but it's really simple to say, would you like a hug? And personally, I would much rather hug somebody who wants to be hugged than not,
Yeah.
than somebody who doesn't want to. To me, that's not a winning scenario.
Right. Yeah. Not like coming at someone when they're like, no, please don't hug me. And you're like, you need this. But
It's
um,
hard, yeah.
I think that a lot of it too, like as we're growing up, we'll get um a lot of that shame kind of around touch as well. So,
Oh, give your grandmother a kiss. Yeah. It's
you're
Yeah.
gonna make Aunt Amanda feel bad if you don't go give her a hug. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not gonna make me feel bad at all. You don't want to hug me, don't hug me. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm constantly saying that. And like I think that like my nieces and nephews probably think I'm a little bit weird because I'm just always like, nope, if you don't want to, like, and everybody else in their life is like, no, please, like you should hug me. But
Yeah.
I do my little own part to try and create that safety net where if you want to give me a hug, I am always here for you to give me a hug. But if you don't want to right now or you just don't feel like it, I'm you're not going to make me feel bad about it. Don't ever think that you have to give someone
Yeah.
physical affection to make them feel better about themselves. Like that's not the lesson we want to teach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean you're so much further ahead than so many people, It's like there's a lot of people who just like never think about this topic, or they make a lot of assumptions, or they take it for granted, or what have you. I mean, it's simple, but it's complicated, right?
Yeah. And I think that really forms a lot of, you know, the things that happen like later in life, right? Like if you were just you have to do this thing because you want to make someone feel better, then all of a sudden, you turn into like that people pleaser like we were talking about. And
Yeah.
are you really getting as much out of the touches that you do get and give if you feel like you have to do them? Whereas if it's
Yeah.
something you've decided to
No.
do on your own, you're going to get so much more out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But I think again it speaks a little bit to how much people are touch starved. I mean, especially for men, if you're not partnered. I mean, I hear about men who the only time they have somebody touch them is when they get their hair cut once every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I knew this woman whose daughter was a hairdresser in a small town in Texas, and she said that these older guys, like in their 70s and 80s, who hardly had any hair, would still come in to get their hair shampooed and get their hair cut, just to get that, that little bit of touch and human connection.
Yeah.
So.
And it's really unfortunate too, because I know I have been spoiled when it comes to this, especially with other men. Because I think back all the time to when I was a kid growing up, like even in high school, I have like a group of like 8 of us would all sleep in the same like queen size bed together. So it's just like 8 of us
I
all in a
love
bed
that.
together. And that's how we would just sleep when we would stay at my friend's house, because his bed was really comfortable. The couch was really old. Sometimes people would fall in like the crevice in between the bed and the wall, and that's where they'd be stuck. But like we were all comfortable enough with each other to be able to do that, to have that space where we would be able to sleep next to each other and think nothing weird of it. And
That is very fortunate and
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. And
I
so
love it.
I always feel bad when I'm working with guys and talking to them, and they're like, "Yeah, man, I don't like." When I offer them a hug, they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like,
Yeah.
offering a hug.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's so unfortunate that that's the place that so many men are at, where they feel awkward just even giving another man a hug, where it's like, if we could get to that point where we have rebranded human touch to where men can feel comfortable doing that, I think like a lot of issues could also be resolved.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I've thought and talked a lot about the connection between loneliness and human touch. I've seen a tiny little bit of research, I'm just like, to me, it's so obvious. And I'm like, why is this not being researched more? Why aren't people like doing, looking at this connection? And, there's so many men out there who are desperately, desperately lonely. And it's like, well, maybe you would be less so if you could have more of this in your lives.
Yeah. So looking at then how, continuing on the discussion of rebranding that human touch, then you had mentioned that there were new archetypes that you had discovered
Yes.
throughout some of your work. So I was wondering if you'd be able to go into a little bit in depth on what those might be, because I really like these archetypes and I think they might be helpful to a lot of people.
Thank you. Yeah, I do too. So again, this kind of came from talking to people, and I fed all the interviews into a qualitative data research program and kind of analyzed them. It's really cool. I was like, oh my God, I love qualitative data so much. So we came up with 4 rebrand archetypes, and the first one is touch is revolutionary. Um, I love this because I've been a rebel most of my life, and there is, in my mind, there is nothing that counteracts the American myth of rugged individualism more than connecting with each other tenderly and taking care of each other through touch. It's a radical act to open up to trusting people and to caring about them as a person as opposed to what they can provide. Um, I think the rebel comes in a lot as this idea of normalizing touching our friends more than just a hello and goodbye hug. And I will call it out right now. It's going to be fucking weird and awkward because we don't have social scripts for it, but it's also worth it. And I should also interject here, when I'm talking about touch, or as I call it, nurturing human touch, it doesn't have to be a hug. It doesn't have to be sleeping 8 people to a bed. It can be as simple as like holding hands, or like you're saying, sitting on the couch with your shoulders touching, or having somebody put their hand on your shoulder, or gently touch your face. It's like rubbing your feet. There's lots and lots of ways to do it. Stroking your forearm. It doesn't have to be, little touch goes a long way. Which actually brings us to our second archetype, which is touch as magician. One of the words that was used a lot when I was interviewing people was transformational. This idea that, if you had gone a really long time without getting some tender, nurturing touch, that it was something that could really transform your life. I see this as something that's very what's the word I want? Sorry, I just lost the word. Applicable to people who have been through some sort of, traumatic experience, like maybe a lot of your listeners, this idea of that, getting touch on your terms in a way that feels really good to you can be transformational, and really and very powerful. And that it does, if we treat it with reverence, it has the power to change people's lives. The third archetype was touch as explorer. This idea of, you know people having to kind of make up their own mind. It's like, you can go, oh my God, it sounds great, I really want more touch in my life, but there's still a lot of thinking through and processing that you're going to have to do. And part of it is, maybe looking into the research around touch, like, some of the health benefits that we talked about, doing the research on that, but also kind of being self-reflective and figuring out what our barriers are, figuring out what we learned from our family of origin. It's interesting. I've had conversations with people that I've met, and they're like, I hate to be touched. Can you help me? I think I want it, I want more touch in my life, but I just can't stand it. And so it's like, okay, well, are you saying that because you think that you're supposed to like touch, or because you really want more? And, why is it that you don't like to be touched? And, how, so it's like, there's a lot of kind of internal processing, I think, that should happen. And that's where the Explorer comes in. I think that's a really great one for people who are in transition. Like they've gone through a divorce, or, like if your pet dies, or your kid's leaving home, or your spouse dies, or you move to a different city, these kind of big, difficult life transitions that we go through. I love this as well for like people who are in a support group. I mean, can you imagine being in a support group like around divorce or something, and as people are talking about their experiences, one person lies on the floor and everybody else just rests their hands on them in a group, while they're talking. It's like, I've seen this happen before, and it's like people feel a lot more supported and connected. So it's like that kind of relationship can be good. And then the final archetype that people really, really seem to like, the women that I interviewed really liked in the research when I was telling them stories, was a kind of a revamped caregiver 2.0, which is focused on caregivers getting more nourishing, focused touch where they're just receiving and not having to be giving constantly. I saw, like, when I was when we had Karuna sessions, the business in Austin, I was really surprised. One of the groups that loved it the most was new mothers, because it's like, I called it like making a deposit in their nurturing banks, because, they're giving, giving, giving all the time. And it's like, here, stop, let us take care of you. You don't have to be putting out selflessly. And I just kind of feel, like one of my interview subjects was like, oh my God, that sounds super soothing. This idea of like getting this really focused touch that was taking care of you, because I feel like the caregivers in the world really need some support. If we're not going to pay them what they're worth, then at least take care of them so that they're better at taking care of everybody else. And I think most of us need that at some point in our lives.
It makes me think of like people going to get a massage. Like, yes, a massage feels good, like they get those muscles or whatever, Um, but it's also kind of a safe way for people who aren't really used to touches or are kind of trying in that maybe that transformative, to just be able to get that touch and have it just be like, okay, this is someone taking care of you. You don't have to give anything to it. And it's it's allowed, right, in our social
Yeah.
structure. Like a man can go get a massage and that is okay. It doesn't mean he's less masculine. So it gives them kind of an out, right, to be able to go get that touch
Yeah.
and feel that feeling without having to sacrifice like his quote unquote manliness or whatever.
Yeah, I did a bunch of research on massage therapy as well, and I want to say I need to look up all my statistics before I do podcasts again, or have a cheat sheet for myself. But I believe that uh, like 60 or 70% of clients for massage therapists are men, which makes sense because they have more resources, but also they don't have as many resources for touch as women might. So, and not as, socially comfortable. So yeah, I think you're really onto something there, Amanda.
Yeah.
I say one of the ones that I really liked about the new archetypes is the explorer specifically.
Yeah.
In part, as a man, it'll let getting people comfortable with the explorer is, I feel like, how we get men to become more comfortable with touch in general. But also,
Yeah.
it gives people the opportunity. It lets people understand that also, like, it is okay to try something and then be able to say afterward, like, I guess I didn't like that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all part of
Yeah.
like the human experience, is learning what things you do and also do not like. Like, I know
Yeah.
I do not want my feet touched. Do not touch them. In part
Oh,
because
come on.
I had issues as a kid where I had like a giant ass wart on my foot, and they had to like actually like freeze it and like dig it out. So like I do not like my feet being touched because of that. So
That makes sense.
knowing that, like, my wife does not touch my feet. Um,
That's fantastic. I would actually, since we're on this topic, I would love to give a shout out really quick to Aaron Johnson, who's doing the Chronically Undertouched project. And his goal is to bring platonic touch to Black men. I am like, you are doing the Lord's work. I'm so impressed with his approach and how he does things, and I would love to take one of his trainings. He's just an incredible human being who is on a similar path to mine, but different, and just absolutely necessary and beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, he's great.
And that was it the Chronically Undertouched program?
Chronically Undertouched project, yes.
Project.
I
Awesome.
can I'll send you some info on him, and he also has a TED Talk that he's done, and yeah, he's a really, really incredible person. I hope I get a chance to meet him in person. I just know him from online, but I love what he's doing. So
awesome. I'll make sure I also throw that in the show notes for the episode too. So if anybody does want that information, check that out. They'll have that there for him as well.
And maybe he'll listen to the podcast and hear that you really want to meet him, and then you'll get to meet him.
He's I think he splits his time between Seattle and Los Angeles. Maybe, I'm not sure. Anyways, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm hopeful at some point that our paths will cross.
Well, if we can help with that, we will do our best.
Awesome.
Touchy subjects, bringing people together.
I actually have another like fantasy, but this is somebody who's a celeb, but I'm hopeful that it'll happen at some point. But anyways, my lips are sealed.
But looking at the archetypes, because you mentioned like people are most familiar with the three that you had talked about earlier, being the caregiver, lover, and villain. Which, yeah, those three are still going to exist, obviously, but
absolutely, 100%.
How can we get people more comfortable with the 4, I guess like 3.5 technically, of the ones that you discovered and we're talking about?
That's a great question. So I'm fond of saying that culture changes through, thousands, if not millions, of interactions every day. And it's like you can make changes in tiny ways. It can be like, if you're having dinner with a friend or lunch with a friend and you've had a bad day, be like, I would really like to hold your hand while I'm talking about this, or could you put your hand on my shoulder? If your pet dies, and would you mind coming over and sitting next to me on the couch and watching a movie because I'm feeling really lonely? One of the things that came out really strongly in my research, one of the stories I told was a story about a woman who was having brunch with 3 of her friends, and she had just gotten divorced, and she was hating dating, and instead had like seen a video of a woman cuddling with her friends, and she asked her friends if they would be willing to do this with her. And all the people I talked about, even if they were like, nope, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that with my friends, were like, wow, it was so powerful to like to hear about this woman being vulnerable enough to admit that this is something that she wants. And so I think that vulnerability will be rewarded. Again, it's going to be awkward and weird because we don't have social scripts. And actually, speaking of social scripts, this is a really good one. I think that is important for people to think about or know. And it's not going to be possible for everybody, but when we think about one person touching another person, that's a sexual experience. We kind of expect that to happen. But when you have a group of people doing it, it becomes something social. And I don't know if your listeners have ever done or been to a cuddle party or something, and it's like everybody's there and they're kind of like, I don't know, this is really bizarre. And then by the end, it's like everybody's smiling and laughing, and it's very playful. It becomes very playful and childlike. And then when people get done, they're like, oh my God, that was so good. I feel blissed out. I feel content. I feel satisfied. I feel happy. I feel peaceful, all these things. So doing it in a group situation, I think, is a lot. But even just, talking about it and pushing yourself out there a little bit, having conversations with people, admitting, it's like so many of us I find that a lot of people are really ashamed of the fact that they're touch starved, that there's something wrong with them because they're supposed to be getting it from their partner, and there's something wrong with them if they're single, and or oh my God, I'm just cuddling with my pet. And it's funny, y'all were talking about this idea of like, a cat knows exactly what they want and they don't want. But one of the things I talk about a lot is um, you know cats are pretty non-consensual as well. I mean, when my cat is like
Oh yeah.
pawing at me at 4 o'clock in the morning while I'm trying to sleep because she wants to be petted, it's like that is not okay. I don't throw her off the bed. I try to like adjust her around so she'll stop doing that. But um yeah, I mean, sorry, I completely lost my
They know what
train of
they know
thought.
what
Okay.
they know what they want. They don't care what you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So, but it's like this idea of like, admitting that, hey, this is something that is a biological need. I think thinking, beginning to think about touch, we don't have to completely divorce it from relationships, but this idea of that it's a biological need like sleep or nutrition or exercise or drinking water, that it's something that's important. I've heard people call it vitamin T for touch. And to begin to shift our thinking in that way. And I feel like we're in a pretty good time for this because there's a lot of things about our culture that are in flux right now. And, um, I think if people are willing to take a risk and be vulnerable, that they might find that it's something that adds a lot to their lives.
So I feel like when we're talking about people who are in relationships, um, like that they're still having that touch starved feeling because they feel like all of those touches are supposed to be sexual, right?
Yeah.
So if you're like feeling this way, but you're like, but I have a partner, like I don't feel like I should be touch starved, but every time like we touch, it's like, oh, okay, it's just gonna lead to sex. So like have a conversation with your partner and take sex off the table. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna cuddle, we're gonna touch, we're gonna whatever, and there is going to be no sex after. We're not trying to get to that point. We're not trying to like get each other in the mood. It's literally just going to be about us cuddling or us snuggling to watch a movie, whatever it is. And try that as some exploratory stuff, right? Like see how that feels. See how it feels if you're just literally rubbing each other's arm or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think that if we can get used to those touches not 100% like leading to that sex, we might be more willing to have those interactions with people, right? And maybe men are craving being touched, they're being touch starved, but the
Yeah.
only way that they know how to do that touch is through sex. So they're wanting sex all the time in this relationship when maybe their partner does not. That might lessen it a little bit, and then you can have more meaningful touches.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the topic of my next book. I want to write a book about non-sexual touch for couples. I kind of started working on it during the pandemic and then put it aside, and then I was in school. Um, but you make a good point, and it's that, our nervous systems are kind of wired to, a lot of times that touch kind of riles you up and excites your I think it's the sympathetic nervous system where it brings the energy up as opposed to like bringing it down. I mean, it's amazing. Like sometimes when I'll do public speaking about this, I'll take people through an exercise where it's like, okay, if you're comfortable with this, turn to your neighbor and just spend a minute touching each other's hands, and it's like you can feel the energy in the room just dropping and calming as our nervous systems co-regulate with each other. And it's like, It's just that little bit of connection is so powerful. And a thing I think that's really helpful for couples with that is to have this idea of really giving and receiving. So you could have, one person lies there, you set a timer for 5 minutes, and it's like you just touch them. You could have, and ask for feedback. Do you want me to keep my hands still, or would you like it to move? Does that feel like I'm gripping too hard, or is that tickling, or and then switch off, so that it becomes this thing where it's a very clear, I'm giving, you're receiving. Okay, now I'm receiving and you're giving. So,
and to kind of take this outside of the relationship or a romantic relationship, then just relationships with other people, if we were all just able to be like a little more kid-like, I think it would make life a lot easier. Because like, one, I hate being an adult. It sucks. But if
for sure,
there's like things that I, from like my kid-like brain, like I will like randomly burst out singing sometimes, or like I like playing games with my friends. Like those are things that I still do. And those are the things that like, help me deal with the day-to-day suckiness of being an adult. But in terms of touch, like if you were to look at like kids playing on a playground, like how often are they like hugging each other, arms around each other? Like,
yeah,
kids have it down as long as they're
right.
granted doing it in a way that's
And then
good
puberty
for everyone.
hits, and
Yeah.
And
then,
they're like, no, can't touch person of opposite sex. Something bad might happen.
Yeah. And it's like, if we could just be a little bit more kid-like and like be okay with and accept touch from other people and not view it as such a like sexualized thing, like it would be a tremendous help.
I agree. You're preaching to the choir over here. I'm the girl who goes to Trader Joe's in her Dayglow rainbow onesie all the time. The clerks love it. The other customers love it. I really have fun with it. Yeah, I'm people are like, do you have children? And I'm like, only my own inner 8-year-old.
Yeah, I all the posters on the wall behind me and the clothes that I wear are to appease my inner child for all the things that he couldn't have when he was younger.
Yes, I love I love it. I love it. It's so good.
So we've been talking a little bit about trying or how people can become more okay with touch or wanting to have people be more okay with touch. So Epiphany, when we spoke previously, you had mentioned a framework that you have. So I was hoping you'd be able to share that with our audience as well to help them maybe become a little bit more comfortable with touch.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I have a kind of a philosophical framework that is the 4 S's. And I'm going to actually start with the last one first because I think it's very relevant to your listeners, which is that the touch should be safe. Um, it's important to recognize that it is a big fucking deal to let another person touch you. I mean, once you get past that once you break through that gap between between two people or 4 people or whatever that is physically there, it feels great. But getting to that point is important, and knowing that people are going to have different boundaries around it and different comfort levels, and that it's something that should be approached with reverence, and this idea of like, oh, you know, not everybody is going to be super comfortable with it from the get-go is really important. So touch should be safe. The second S is slow. It's good to go slowly and start with less touch. Just touching a person's hands or fingers or shoulder, or oh, you're gonna hate this one, Sean, the idea of like massaging each other's feet, because you can be really far apart from each other physically,
Yeah, that
physically.
sucks.
And just taking it really slowly. Especially if you haven't had touch for a long time, it's almost like titrating a dosage, that it's like you progressively get more intimate and physically closer to each other, but going slow and checking in and, making sure that, that a person likes something. The second is S is, or third, excuse me, is structured. To do it in a really formal setting, to kind of set up exercises. Okay, I'm going to start the timer for 2 minutes and I'm going to touch your hand. And then I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes and you're going to touch mine. And, to do it in this really kind of, very structured way so that what you're trying to do is create a similar frame of reference to people. And, once you have that frame of reference and also knowing a little bit about what you want and need, then you can be more casual about it. But to start, I think having it be very structured is helpful, making it kind of formal, almost like a workshop. And then the last one is specific. Most people have no idea what kind of touch they like, where they want to be touched. It's like, we can talk about sexual touch all day long, every day, oh, nibble my earlobe, kiss my neck, suck on my nipple, whatever, it's like a lot of us know those kinds of things, but, we don't know if it's going to feel better to have somebody grasping our forearm as opposed to gently stroking down it or tapping it with their fingers or, doing light scratches or something. And so, this idea of like, to really kind of learn what it is that our bodies like, and giving us opportunities to ask for it. Um, oh, I really liked when we sat next to each other with our shoulders touching, but I really didn't like it when you put your arm around my shoulders, and it's like, that's another thing that's kind of revolutionary. It's like nobody ever asks us, what we want, and, especially in the realm of touch. And so I think playing with this concept with those ideas in mind can help people, navigate what is going to be super unfamiliar territory for most of us.
Yeah, I know it's going to be super helpful to have our listeners be able to kind of go through that and almost use this as like a checklist, essentially. Because again, the Explorer being my favorite one that was brought up, this is a great framework for those who are using the Explorer Touch of,
yeah,
how
100%.
Like, how do I build this out? How do I communicate this with my partner or my friend or my parents or whoever I'm trying to have more touch with? And then how do we do so in a safe manner that's going to work for both or all parties that are going to be involved in this? And I also just really like the safe part of it, especially for our listeners, because if it is somebody who's experienced an assault or a violation of their body,
it's a big fucking deal. Huge, huge, huge. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And it allows them to get some of that power back, not only by being able to say, yes, I can have this touch with someone, but this framework is putting that solely in their court. This is what I'm okay with. This is not what I'm okay with. And that's how we're going to work on building this then.
Yeah. And I think too, this idea of that, okay, we're going to do this and it's not going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. Although, Amanda, when you were talking, it was funny because I was thinking about it, and I used to do this with one of my partners, and we would kind of like be home and end of a stressful day, and it's like, okay, let's do some touch, and then when we were done, it's like, okay, now I'm in the mood to finish. So, but yeah, it is good to kind of take that off the table, and especially, it's like, there's this feeling that you can get like, oh, we used to do, when we would do, like, when we would start our sessions with Karuna sessions, we'd do a lot of really light touch, and then we'd put the person in between us. We'd lie them on their side, and one of us would be spooning them from the back, and the other one would be hugging them from the front. And there was always this place a few minutes in where it just felt like it was floating, just like this timeless space of being safe and being held. And not needing to do anything or prove anything, and just kind of being there. This idea of, and also like having it be something that's deeply, deeply relaxing. I mean, one of the things that our bodies need more than anything, I think, is just deep, nourishing relaxation. It's like many of us are overworked and we're not sleeping enough, and our bodies are carrying an enormous amount of stress, and this idea of just being able to relax and breathe and not touching our phones for a bit is amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have really bad anxiety, and I get like anxiety attacks and panic attacks and stuff pretty often. Um and I'm going to tell you, like, the best thing, like, once I've gotten out of like the panic mode of it, but I'm still, you know, is just for somebody to like skin on skin, like rub their hand up and down my back. Like, I don't
Great
know,
tool.
like it's the only thing that's gonna like actually calm me down after it. And so if I'm even just like feeling myself start to panic, I'll be like, okay, this is what I need right now. Like, come, just start like just touching my back, like just rub my back. Like, I need it. It's gonna help. And
Mm,
like, I'm not a person who has a lot of problem with touching, like with the right person in the right time and all of those things.
yeah.
But um you mentioned like a cuddle party earlier, and I actually had a friend like not very long ago ask like a big group, like, does anybody want to have a like just a cuddle party? And I was like, I am for it. Like, let's do it. You let me know the time
Yeah.
and the place and I will be there. But we just really need to like open ourselves up a little bit more to those people that we do trust, like, because we
Yeah.
we need to do it with people that we feel comfortable with. um but being able to just hold your friend's hand, being able to just give them a hug, or put your head on their arm when you're watching a movie or whatever, just being close to people. And
Yeah.
it none of that is in any way sexual. Like, it doesn't have to be, and it can just be so fulfilling.
Yeah. I think that's an especially important thing to think about. I mean, I know a lot of single people who don't have a partner, who are sick of dating, but they have a very strong network of friends. I mean, like, I have a woman friend that oh God, we've been friends probably for 15 years. She's married, she has two kids, and we hang out and cuddle. It's like it's just something that's really nice for both of us. Um, and I think that that is a huge untapped resource and kind of the missing link, I think, for a lot of people who are maybe looking at a life of singlehood, like I'm done trying to date. I probably won't have a partner. It's kind of the one thing that you can not that we don't have other places to access that. I mean, I think about that. It's like I can masturbate, I can have great sex with myself, but that's something that if you don't have a romantic partner, it's kind of cut off to you. And although, as we've said as well, that it might be something that you do have a romantic partner and you're still not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's I love that as part of the rebel archetype. That it's like let's normalize cuddling with our friends. I mean, I would way rather have an awkward conversation with one of my friends than go on a terrible date and sit there for an hour going, oh my God, please get me out of here. So
I think
yeah.
it's important too for people who maybe they've been in a long-term relationship that they're no longer in for whatever reason. You broke up, someone passed away, like whatever it is.
Oh, hugely, hugely, absolutely.
Yeah, you've got like your body is used to that touch, and all of a sudden it's just yanked out of your life.
Yeah.
And part of that grieving process is really that
Being
loss
held.
of touch. And if we
Yeah.
can try and get that from our friends, from a family member, from whomever, that can help lessen that loss to us.
Oh, hugely. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things, when we're grieving, we need touch for comfort, and that's kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, you see it a little bit, I mean, if you go to a funeral, everybody's hugging each other at the end, but that's still not a lot. That may be
Yeah,
just
that's
for
one
a
day.
moment. Yeah, exactly. And if we're able to create those networks for ourselves, then I think it buffers us when we do go through loss and transition, which is, part of the human experience. And it's like, to really be able to be there with somebody. And it's nice too, because you don't have to try and fix them. You don't have to try and do something for them. You don't have to figure out the right words to say. You can just be there with them and comfort them.
Which is great if you're someone who struggles with finding words to use to help someone.
Yeah.
Like, this might be the thing that you're really good at if you just feel like you're not super great with words.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. If you want uplifting conversation, go talk to Jess. If you just want to cuddle with someone, I got you.
That's wonderful. I love that. That's really good.
Well, Epiphany, Amanda and I have both very much enjoyed having you here today. But before we sign out, is there anything else you would like to push out or tell our listeners?
I guess just expect that this is something that you're probably going to have to think about, and it might piss you off. And feel free to take your time and be cautious, and move through the ideas slowly. It's meant to, you're meant to go at your own pace. If you don't, it's like it has to be on your own terms, or it doesn't really make sense. It's not meaningful otherwise.
Right. Well, thank you again, Epiphany. And then before we sign out here, do you have any socials you would like to push out to our audience?
Oh my God, I do, although I'm really bad about keeping them updated. Actually, the framework we talked about with the 4 S's is included in the book Somebody Hold Me, A Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch, which you can find on all of the digital platforms. It is available in print, in an e-reader, and also as an audiobook. And there's actually kind of a DIY workshop that walks you through the whole thing. I have like an email that you can send to your friends saying, "Hey, are you interested in trying this?" And kind of how to set the whole thing up, and options for people who maybe don't have groups of friends. There's exercises you can go through, the whole 9 yards. Um, my website is www.nurturinghumantouch.com. And hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have a new page up on the website. I'm starting to offer health and wellness coaching around this
Awesome.
topic, helping people figure out what resources they have, or what kind of stuff they need to figure out before they, how they can get more touch in their lives. I'm on Instagram under somebody_hold_me. There's also a Facebook page for Somebody Hold Me, and I don't have TikTok. I've been what am I trying to say? Avoiding that. I've been avoiding TikTok, but
Hey, it is a lovely and not so lovely time sink of mine. So
I know I'm trying to get rid of a lot of my social media time sucks. So yeah, anyways, yeah, that's about it. And feel free to
awesome.
drop me a line if you have more questions, or want to know more, want to chat about this topic. And again, thank you for having me on your show. It's been a super fun conversation, and I hope it's helpful for some of your listeners.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. And links to all of those will be in the show notes for any of our listeners if you do want to get in contact with Epiphany. But thank you, Epiphany, and thank you all for listening today.
Thank you, Sean and Amanda. Yeah.
Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at TouchySubsPod to keep up to date when we have new content and new episodes coming out. Please email us any questions, comments, or concerns to touchysubjectspodcast@gmail.com. And please rate and follow us on your favorite podcast listening app. It really helps the show out.
And in the meantime, don't be afraid to challenge, ask, and discuss when it comes to touchy subjects.